Welcome to the example of asynchronous versus synchronous code. I've turned the story from the previous video into some JavaScript code to show you how it actually works there. Let's look at that now. So I've created 3 objects for the greengrocer, the cheese shop, and the bakery. And they all have some properties that are functions, so we call them methods, to buy some groceries. And a little bit lower in the file, we have 3 functions that visit all the 3 shops, and of course, the greengrocer and the cheese shop are synchronous, just like in the story, and the bakery is asynchronous. Well, how could you tell that the bakery function is asynchronous? Well, there's 2 ways you can tell. One from looking at the code and the other from running the code. If you look at the code, then we can see that this bakery.buyBread actually takes a function, and this function is called a callback, and in the there will be more videos about callback specifically, but we call this a callback, and from this we can tell that this is actually asynchronous code. Well, that's not completely true. We don't know for sure that this is asynchronous code, because the real way to tell if it's asynchronous is to look into the buyBread function and see what is actually happening with this function. And if we do that, we see that it's using a set timeout. And this definitely tells us that this is asynchronous code. But the best way to see that this is an asynchronous function is by looking at what happens when you run the code. And I'm going to show you the code running in 2 different ways. But let's first do the most simple way, just opening it in the terminal. Let's go, now run it. So I've also added some timing methods to this code, so it measures how long it takes. Well, the greengrocer, it takes 0 milliseconds. It's done immediately. It kind of makes sense because the function visit greengrocer, well, it just buys the 3 products, and then it calculates time taken, and inside the greengrocer it just returns. So this runs instantly, basically, in less than 0 milliseconds, or less than 0 milliseconds. So really fast. Then the next stop was the bakery in our little story, and let's make this a little bit smaller so we can see both of them. Yes. So at the bakery, we go to the bakery, and then we call buyBread, but because buyBread uses that set timeout, it's one of the many functions or ways that code can become asynchronous. Because we use that, it will actually run this code after 1 second has passed. But like in our story, we're not gonna stand there waiting for 1 second and do nothing. We're actually gonna go and do something else. So we say buyBread, and we give it a callback, and we tell this function, hey, call us back on this function whenever you're ready. So after the 1 second timeout. And so you can see here, then it says, we'll call you back. Well, so we have the bakery, we visit the bakery, and then it says, we'll call you back. And then first we go to the cheese shop. So here we actually go to the cheese shop. And then the code for the cheese shop runs. But at the cheese shop we had to wait for the cutting of the cheese, right? Like in the previous story. So here we have the cut cheese function, which waits for 100 milliseconds. So here, inside the cut cheese, we have a while loop that will just run until the time is 100 milliseconds higher than the time that it was on this line. And this while loop looks a bit strange because it doesn't have a body, but you can imagine that there's a empty body here, because the body is empty. It's not doing anything inside the while loop. It's just waiting and blocking. Actually, it's cutting the cheese here, of course, but it doesn't really make sense to put that in code. So we can leave out this empty block. And after 100 milliseconds, this will become false. So the while loop will exit, and we will go here, and then we return what we bought. So at that point, that takes 100 milliseconds because of that cutting function, and then actually not immediately, but about 900 milliseconds later, this code will run, the callback from bakery. And so then this callback function got called, this one, and we actually get our result, and we get the time taken, which is a little bit over 1 second, because probably some of these console logs actually also take time. And yeah, that's our story written in JavaScript. And one more interesting thing, when we run this code with Quokka, we can see that this visit greengrocer, well, Quokka is a little bit slower than when you run it directly via nodes, like I did here. But with Quokka, we see that visit greengrocer took 5 milliseconds. Visit bakery took 1 millisecond. Well, that's strange because it actually takes 1 whole second, so 1000 milliseconds. And visit cheese shop took 100 milliseconds. Well, that makes sense because we put the cutting of the cheese took 100 milliseconds. That's what we, that's the way we set it up. And why is it actually that the visit bakery's function takes only very little, 0.3 milliseconds now? Well, it's because this function, if I close, this function actually runs from top to bottom. So it runs this line, then it runs this line, then it runs this whole line, and then it runs this line. And then it actually finished with this visit bakery function. Only later it will do this, but visit bakery is finished. So that's it. I hope this is clear. If not, let me know.